it's a one-owner, low-mileage car. It's never been out of the family. That makes it very valuable.
And nobody wanted it in my family. Nobody wanted. Nobody cared about it. It was about estate planning, and they said, "All right, well, what about the car in the garage?"
Welcome to an episode of Jay Leno's Garage. Something unusual today. Two-door coupes, or coupes as I would say, but if you got more than 100 grand, it's a coupe. All right, fine. These are both Rolls-Royces. This is the Camargue from the 70s and 80s. You know, two-door coupes used to be the thing back in the day, but you just don't see them anymore. A new generation has embraced the four-door cars, like even the Dodge Charger with the Hellcat motor. The four-door, probably more popular than the two-door Challenger because, well, you got four doors. It's easy to get in, easy to get out of. Those from my generation, to us, the ultimate was the two-door coupe. And these are probably two of the best two-door coupes around. Let's bring on our good friend, Donald Osborne. Donald is, you know, the appraiser extraordinaire. Donald, how are you, my friend?
I'm terrific, Jay. Thank you very much.
Now, you are a big fan of the Camargue, right?
I am a huge fan of the Camargue. It has been one of my favorite cars from the time I was very young, for a number of reasons. And as you just mentioned, the fact that the two-door coupe is something that is such a romantic car. The practicality of a four-door, of course, is undoubted.
Right.
But these are both four-passenger cars.
Right.
So, and there's also something about the idea that a coupe showed that you had sort of extra time, extra style to spare. You didn't need a practical car because you had something that just gave you that little bit of extra something.
Exclusivity.
Exclusivity, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about your Spectre. I know how much you love the Spectre.
Yeah, I love
the Spectre. I think it's a terrific car. I was fortunate enough last year to visit the Rolls-Royce factory when they were first launching the car and saw the pre-production models on the assembly line and the launch car there, and I thought, wow, this is an incredibly beautiful car, and I was immediately reminded of the Camargue. And I told you so, and you said, Camargue, please.
Well, it's all right. It's like Donald himself. It's a bit slab-sided, as you can see. And it has a vinyl roof. Now, to me, in America, the vinyl roof meant somebody screwed up the paint, put a vinyl roof on the top. When a Ford or a Chevy or a Cadillac, if there were bubbles or something in the paint, they would put a vinyl roof on because it was cheaper than redoing it. So why Rolls-Royce would choose to have a vinyl roof, I don't understand. And
Jay, it goes back to the whole idea of both coach building and, again, that bit of exclusivity. A four-door is more practical than a two-door, and what was less practical than a two-door hardtop? A convertible. So you look at this and you think faux cabriolet, as they say here in Burbank.
I don't, you really think this looks, anybody would make this for a convertible?
It's the visual idea of a top that is not the same as the body, something that could go down. Now, of course, there's another story that we're getting ahead of ourselves on.
Anybody would confuse this with a convertible top is the same person who would wear a plaid blue jacket with tan pants. It's just not done.
Well, in certain circles, it is.
Right.
And one of the things about the Camargue that really attracts me to it is, first of all, the design. As you know, I'm a devotee of design. The shameless plug here, you know that I wrote that wonderful book, Stile Transatlantico,
And it's
Style.
a really terrific book.
Thank you.
A great book on style and on Italian automobiles, yeah.
And this car, of course, was designed by Paolo Martin of Pininfarina. And it has an essential, you mentioned the slab-sidedness. There is an essential nature of Italian design that's really expressed in this car, and frankly, something that Rolls-Royce got for the Silver Shadow. When you think about the Silver Clouds and how sort of Baroque and sort of late 1930s they were, the Silver Shadow was a breakthrough, a thoroughly modern, clean design. And this is a car that has an incredibly different character from the Silver Shadow, but still has sort of a family
Well, let me ask you something. To me, the smaller the Italian car, the prettier the design. Once Italians get into big American size, something seems to be lost. Like this seems overly long within the wheelbase here to me. You know, if you asked the Italians to design a smaller two-seater, I think it would be the most beautiful car in the world. But it's not something they're used to doing. You know, this sort of looks like an American design, like a Lincoln or a Cadillac. It's big in that way. Does that make sense?
It does, but you have to think about where that Lincoln design came from, and the root of this design, and frankly what you can see also here in the Spectre, is the car that Pininfarina did back in 1957 called the Florida 2. based
Right.
on the Aurelia, and it basically set the architecture for the modern coupe. The long hood, a very thick what they call the C-pillar, the pillar in the back of the car, and you see that it formed the basic architecture for what we think of as the luxury coupe. The Ford Thunderbird, the Riviera, the Toronado, they all have that same aspect. You can see it also in your Chrysler Imperial
Right,
coupe. It's the
right.
same thing. And what was really interesting about the Camargue is the fact that the design is almost identical to one of my other favorite cars, and this is where things start to get a little choppy because that car happens to be a Fiat.
Right.
The Fiat 130 Coupe, which is one of the most beautiful cars
Oh,
ever
yeah.
designed.
See, now that's that. I think I agree with you there because that's this shape proportionate.
But it's
That's
only
better
slightly
looking.
smaller than this car. The
Oh,
Fiat 130 Coupe is a big car.
It's quite a bit. It's big by Italian standards,
Yeah.
but it's no bigger than a Ford Falcon or a Mustang by American standards.
No, you're right. It's
Okay,
probably the
okay.
same size as
Like, see,
an
to
American
me,
intermediate
I
car.
think we're saying the same. If this was shrunk just a bit. Plus, the thing that bothers me, at this point in the 70s and 80s, Rolls-Royce was in trouble. You know, in 1949, Cadillac built the best car in the world. V8, power windows, power steering, power brake, air conditioning, automatic transmission. Rolls-Royce, the best car in the world, 6-cylinder, wind-up windows, manual transmission. I mean, it didn't have anything. It didn't have speed, performance. Cadillac was really the standard of the world. And then, as we move forward a little bit, the Rolls-Royce started using Cadillac transmissions, the GM, a lot of Cadillac parts, which is okay, but they couldn't meet emissions. They're a small company. We sold a Rolls-Royce Shadow to a guy. We delivered it to his house. Oh, thank you very much. Guy goes in his house, comes out the next morning. The car is burned to the ground in his driveway. It just burned to the ground. And he called us, and we went out there, and my boss said, well, you must have been smoking in it. Guy goes, I wasn't smoking in it. I didn't even drive it. It's parked in the driveway. I'm glad it was in the house. It would have burned the house down. Well, I think you were smoking. I don't even smoke. There's a huge fight, some kind of law. Just hilarious. You know, to me, this next generation of the Rolls-Royces is where the real greatness is. Once it got money, once it got BMW involved, then they had the money to build something like this. To me, this is the greatest Rolls because it does exactly what a Rolls. It's dead quiet. It doesn't make any noise. It's smooth.
We're going to get to the aspects that make the Spectre, as you say, and I agree, the quintessential Rolls-Royce, the essence of what Rolls-Royce stands for. But let's turn back to the Camargue for a moment because the Camargue also represented a number of things. First and foremost, it was all about a return to British craftsmanship. These cars were hand-built. They built 2 a week. Over the entire production span of the car, they only built 531 of them.
Right.
So they were really built the way Rolls-Royces had been
which is
built.
better, hand-built or a laser, okay? A laser's going to cut it precisely. That old myth of
Jeff Laser,
how are you, mate?
Jeff Laser worked on this car. In fact,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
signed the door.
Yeah.
But one of the things that there's a wonderful promotional film which you must see that accompanied the launch of the Camargue.
Yeah.
And it starts with this giant gleaming ingot of steel.
Right.
And it said, British steel for a British car. Right. And they flatten it out and then they make the body panels and you see them in the buck in the factory and putting it all together. And,
Yeah, but they used to have that ad too. The quietest thing you hear, the noisiest thing you hear in a Rolls-Royce is a clock. Well, that means it had a really noisy clock. The clock was really noisy, you know. It was not, this is what it should be.
I'd like to amaze you with a fact.
All right, go ahead.
Where do you think Rolls-Royce chose to introduce the Camargue to the press? What location?
Was it in France somewhere at the, well.
Sicily.
Oh, Sicily,
They took
okay.
20 cars down to Sicily
Okay.
and unleashed the journalists on Sicilian winding roads in this
Right,
car. And you
right.
think, they're out of their minds. But they all came back with an astonishing discovery, the fact that what they expected, they didn't find.
Right.
This car handled like no other Rolls-Royce before it, and then later it got the rack and pinion steering, which really improved
there
it
was
even
no
more.
substitute for Rolls-Royce quality. It's just they were a small company, and they were in trouble in the 70s with emissions. It was a General Motors transmission. It was Frigidaire air conditioning. A lot of American parts just built and put together at a much higher standard than we did. You know, when you get into something like this is true. This is ground up to be exactly what it is. This is a complete clean sheet of paper. It's Rolls-Royce all the way. I mean, again, they were still struggling here. You know, I was at the factories in the 90s, and it was still from World War II, you know, it was the old buildings and all that. I mean, it's a great testament that they got the cars out at all. But now they've got the freedom and the money to make something like this, which is truly, this really is the quietest car in the world. It's just amazing to drive.
Well, I know that one of your favorite cars, as mine, is the Grosser Mercedes, the Mercedes 600.
Oh yeah, that's the best car.
And that was built by Mercedes as a statement car.
Right.
This is the same thing with the Camargue. I mean, one of my favorite things on this car are the details. The door handles are absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah, very
The way
pretty.
they're designed, the way they feel when you open the door, it's absolutely amazing. This was also the first car with bi-level air conditioning. So you could send cool air to the face and warm air to the feet.
Right.
And you know, you don't think about Rolls-Royce making, you know, groundbreaking inventions in terms of climate
Right.
control. But nevertheless, there it was. Plus, again, as a statement car, this was the most expensive production car in the world when it was introduced. It was twice the price of a Silver Shadow.
How much was it?
It was $125,000 in 1976 when it was introduced. By the time you get to this car in 1983, they're $150,000.
Right.
And so it's an extraordinary statement. I mean, the Spectre is, you know, at $400,000, just a few $1,000 more expensive than a Phantom.
Right.
Actually,
Well,
no,
you're not
Phantom
going to
is more
get one for
expensive.
400, but
Well, once you select your options tastefully from the list.
Yeah.
Yeah, if Rolls-Royce could have done that then.
There's one thing on this car that drives me crazy. It's a deal breaker for me. Can I show you what it is? It's the gas filler door. Look, it's right. See, look at that. I mean, that's like something that was GM at its worst in the late 70s and 80s when Chrysler and all those other people just piling out cars. I mean, that's the least Rolls-Royce thing, and it's something you'll use at least twice a week with a car like this because you're only getting about 6 or 8 miles per gallon. And it'd be enough that's a deal breaker for me. It just drives me crazy.
Well, I can understand then why you love the Spectre so much, because of course you don't have to stop in a gas station with
Right.
it. But no, turning to this as well, back to this car, I think that what the Spectre represents, as you have said many times, the fact that what you want from a Rolls-Royce is silence, is waftability, and this is the ultimate waftmobile.
Well,
You
see,
could
the
not,
thing is, I've always bought cars for performance, never for, if they happen to be comfortable, well, that was great. Like the Tesla, the Plaid, fastest accelerating car you could get at the time. It might be one or two faster now. Oh, it was also comfortable. Well, that's okay. This is like the F1 of comfort. You get in there, and there's no sports setting, there's no launch mode. It does one thing, it's a library on wheels. As much as I like to make noise and go fast, I also like, to be extreme. It's one extreme, it's a car of extremes, and that's what I like. I hate cars that do everything, like an SUV. You can carry plywood in it, you can go to the dance, you can do this.
And
you
do
can go
0
the
to 60 in 3.5
yeah,
seconds.
I don't want a car that does everything, you know? It's like a mistress that can cook. I don't really care. I'm not that hungry.
Well, the Camargue is, as I said, one of my all-time dream cars, and I think that it truly represents, in the 1970s and early 80s, what the Spectre represents to Rolls-Royce today.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree, but it wasn't that popular, though, was it?
No, well, it wasn't popular again because it was extremely expensive.
Extremely expensive, but I remember critics at the time not thrilled about, well, again, the slab-sided. It took a certain trained eye like yourself to find it. To me, if I took a picture of this from here and just showed it to someone on the street, they go, Cadillac, Lincoln, Imperial? No, it's a Rolls-Royce. It doesn't look like a Rolls-Royce from here.
Well, I'd like to now have us joined by the owner of this car, a young man that I met him and his mother in a bar in Vermont.
Okay,
as
look,
one
whatever
does.
look, we're not going to bring Tinder into this. Yeah.
I was on a car rally, and we
Right.
were staying in the hotel,
Right.
and they were there to do the Land Rover experience.
Right.
We started chatting about cars, and he mentioned to me that he had this Rolls-Royce that had a very special connection to him, so I think it's really interesting. Why don't we meet Ben Lipman, the owner of this car?
Ben, come on in.
Hi guys. Donald, thanks
Ben.
for having me.
Ben,
Jay.
how are you?
I'm good. How are
Good
you?
to see you. Good to see you.
Tell Jay a little bit about what this car is and what it represents, because I've not mentioned the fact that where this car came from.
Yeah, so this car is incredibly special. It was my grandfather's, and unfortunately, a couple years after he bought it, he passed away. And my grandmother refused to drive it at all. So it sat in a garage in Westchester in a cool, nice, dry garage, and it just sat there for decades. And growing up, I would always just run to the garage whenever we would visit my grandmother. So I would sit in each individual seat pretending to be what my grandfather felt like at the time driving, and my mom sitting in the back when she was getting driven to school. And, but it never worked. Nothing turned on. The tires were completely flat.
Wow.
And it was always a dream of mine, you know, to have it. And so when I was 16 years old, my grandmother decided to officially give it to me as my.
So your first car is a Rolls-Royce.
So
okay.
my first car is a 1983 Rolls-Royce Camargue.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
pretty good.
I know. So that's definitely bragging points for me. But a broken and not used Rolls-Royce Camargue. So about 9 years later, I ran into this kind gentleman in, you know, the hotel of
In a bar.
In a bar,
in a
exactly.
bar at the Equinox Hotel in Vermont after he was finishing a rally. He told me that I should not sell the car. I should put money into it and you know, bring it back to life.
How many miles are on it?
11,500.
Wow. Wow. Oh, that's a great. Well, I would save that. I mean, yeah, I would do that. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
So the funny story is he said, take it to Carriage House Motor Cars. And I said, you know what? I think somewhere in the glove box there's a Carriage House Motor Cars, I don't even know, like sticker or
a
stamp
bill
or
or
bill.
something.
And so when I called Carriage House, I said, you know, there's something in my car that says Carriage House. And he says, who are you? I said, I'm Ben Lipman. He said, where'd you get the car? I said, my grandma. And he's like, who is your grandfather? And I said, Sidney Fettner. And he said, I sold your grandfather that vehicle.
That's great.
That is such a Jay Leno story.
So he was thrilled to see it flatbedded into his garage, and it took a long time to fix up because the gas tank is glued in. I don't know why Rolls-Royce and Bentleys, you know, in the past glued their gas tanks in.
Right.
So they took about a month flushing out fluid to
Right.
be able to take it out, and ultimately it took them about 6 months, but they got it up and running, and it's in perfect condition. And
No, that's great.
and I've been using it for the last 2 years, and it's amazing. It drives like a Rolls-Royce.
Yeah. Oh no, I mean, that's a great story. I mean,
It's absolutely
anytime you
astonishing.
find a car with, if I could find my dad's 1957 Plymouth Belvedere,
you would be
we
all
went to
over
Crabtree Motor. Where in Westchester was the car?
It is
What
in
town?
Rye.
Oh, right near Playland.
Yes, exactly.
I was born in New Rochelle.
Yeah, so that's where my mother grew up.
And let me ask you a question. As you were a little boy sitting in all the seats, what did you feel like the first time you actually got behind the wheel of the car to drive it? Now, not counting the fact that it broke down.
When I picked it up from Carriage House, the mechanic looked at me and said, your grandfather is looking down at you and is thrilled. And it just made the whole experience worth it. And pulling out, and I've never driven something that with the steering wheel so thin and
Yeah.
so big, it felt like I'm driving an old yacht. And I think what's something so incredible about this car is the doors are so long that you actually have 2 door handles on the inside. So the people in the back just press a button
Oh, yeah.
And they
and can open up the door themselves.
Like the Tornado, yeah.
Exactly.
Same thing, yeah.
But it was incredibly special. I love giving people rides in it. My girlfriend loves driving in it and taking her shoes off with the
mouton rugs.
4-inch,
Yeah.
you know, carpets.
Would you say this is the most American Rolls-Royce ever? Because it seems that way to me. With the twin door handle, it just seems has a lot of features that American cars had at the
Again,
time.
my Italo bias showing again.
Right.
Those second door handles are actually first seen on coach-built cars in Italy in the 1950s.
Now you say Italo as an idiot or as an Italian?
You decide.
Well, I already decided.
I also think it's worth mentioning that one person decided they wanted theirs to be a Bentley. So out of the
Yes.
531 of these made,
Oh,
one of
was
them,
a Bentley.
yeah, because it was made in the same coach building factory.
Now, see, if I was in your position, I would have done exactly the same thing. Because a lot of times you buy the car as much as you buy the story. And I don't think I would turn this car down. I don't. But if you ask me which one I like better, I got to go with this one because I used to work for Rolls-Royce. I worked at a dealership in the 70s. And when these came in, like I said, Rolls-Royce was a small company. They were based in fact, I used to fly down to New York, drive them off the boat, drive them up to our dealership in Massachusetts on Commonwealth Avenue, And when customers ask, why are there 200 miles on the car? Oh, those are test miles done
Exactly.
by the factory. No, it's me.
By white-coated factory technicians.
I would fly down 2 or 3 days a
Nigel
week
and-
and bring them back. You know, so it's not like now where it comes in a
Cocoon,
velvet,
right.
yeah, velvet glove essentially on a trailer. So it was just a different time. But you know, it's fascinating, and it's a great. Just to think this is 100% original is very, very impressive.
It's astonishing. What's your favorite thing about the car?
My favorite thing about the car is definitely the color. I am obsessed
Yeah,
with
beautiful
this color.
color.
And I'm obsessed with the dark blue interior. I think my grandfather did it right.
Yeah,
And
no, he picked the right color.
And yeah, it's the only one. It's called Nuella Blue. I don't know what that means. But I love how it looks. I've seen, you know, online, black ones, silver ones, white ones, and I don't think...
Don't talk about people who buy black Rolls-Royce Coupes.
But see,
Be
I'm a bit
careful.
like, in this, you put me in this position, I'm a bit like the guy that's sitting at the opera, and he says to the guy next to him, this lead singer, she's fat, she's stupid, she's ugly, she can't sing. Guy goes, that's my daughter. Let me finish! You know, and I'm kind of in the same position.
Jay, this is exactly what I wanted to do to put you in this
Exactly,
position.
exactly.
Thank you very much, Ben.
But Ben, no, I think I'd love to be able to go for a ride. Can we drive it?
And
we
I
take it
think
out?
you're going to be astonished by how quiet it is. So
Oh,
it might,
I know how-
It might be quieter than your electric car.
Oh, that'd be interesting to see. But
So
yeah.
we should, you know, see how many decibels
Are
it
those
is
new?
at 50.
Those are obviously new tires.
Had to get new tires as it was sitting for 20 years. They,
Right,
they
right,
got
right.
flat. So new tires, I think that's the only thing new. And a new battery.
And how many miles have you put on it, do you think?
Maybe about 500 to and from the Hamptons a few times.
Okay.
I live in New York City, so
I would keep a C-Tech battery charger on it all the time.
yes, it is always plugged in.
Okay,
So I
good,
leave it at my aunt and uncle's house.
Right,
Thank you to them for letting me keep it there.
Let's
So,
go for. I suppose we have to bring Donald. So, all
Yes.
right. Have we got a kid seat in the back?
I'll
Yeah, I think
happily
so.
stay in the back
Oh, all
because
right,
I
all
think
right.
it's more comfortable than the
All right,
front.
let's take it for a ride.
Let's go.
I love the thin steering wheel.
I love it too.
Yes.
So you still hate it?
No, I don't hate it. I don't hate it. What I mean is, it's just not. Well, the idea was we were going to discuss which design is better, and to me, the Spectre, I think design is cleaner and more streamlined.
Yes.
This is so flat side. You know, with modern aerodynamics, when you see something flat-sided like this right in the front, you go, well, I can't get very good mileage with that. 'Cause when you
But,
realize,
that's also an interesting conversation because, you know, the Alfa Romeo Giulia sedans,
right?
which they race, the TI Super, they have an amazingly low coefficient of
Because
drag,
you
even
had a
though they're square.
cam-style back.
The cam style back and also the chamfered style
Right.
run on the fenders.
Right.
It really moved air in a very efficient way, and you don't think of it because you think, oh, this looks like this really square sedan. Not that this is designed for aerodynamics. It was not.
I wonder what designers got paid to, if you're a designer and you designed it, you work for Pininfarina and you designed this for Rolls-Royce, are you just collecting your weekly salary?
Your weekly salary, and in fact, when the time when Paolo Martin designed this, all the design houses didn't actually acknowledge or recognize or publicize the name of the person who actually designed it. It was
Right.
designed by Pininfarina.
Yes.
But it's fair to say anybody to design one of these cars could never afford to buy one, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Is that
No,
probably
yeah,
true?
100%, especially a car like this, yes.
You know, when I got my Spectre, I said, well, let me call the designer and ask them what they think is the best color. I wanted something conservative. Well, the Morganite over the lavender with white trim. I go, okay, hey, good talking to you. Thanks, Paul. You know, I don't want Morganite pink with white lavender. I just, and they were insistent that was the color.
When Jay told me he had ordered, I said, oh, what colors? Because I just went to the factory and seen this amazing array of colors. And he said, yeah, black.
Well, I'll tell you a story. Ben, you see the garage. We drive all kinds of exotic cars around all the time. And, you know, McLaren's, Duesenberg, people wave. Buddy of mine comes over with a 64 or 65 Silver Cloud. He paid $15,000 for it, all beat up, but it ran just barely. He said, can we get it going for? Go retune it. So let's go around the block. So we'll go around the block, come to the stoplight, guy looks over at me and gives me the finger because I'm in a Rolls Royce. if I was in a McLaren, which is millions of dollars, hello, how are you? Because I look like the landlord coming to pick up the rent, you know? They look at me like, guy goes, hey, screw you. I go, hey, pal, how you doing? You know, it was a $15,000 car at best.
I think it's interesting that they let it go on for so long. I mean, what car do you see today that doesn't change for 13 years?
Dodge Challenger.
Well, two things. With a car like this, with such low volume, they're not going to invest in tooling changes for it.
Right.
That's not going to happen. Plus, I used to like the idea, again, the Germans used to run cars for 10 years before they changed over models.
Right. Yeah, as Mark Twain said, I like progress. It's change I don't like. You can't sell something before its time. When the Chrysler Airflow came out with this, looked like a Santa Fe Express, it looked like an Art Deco train. Couldn't give it away. It lasted 1 year, and they said, I just went back to ordinary-looking cars. Yeah.
So what do you think about the noise levels?
It's very quiet. You don't even hear the tires, which is amazing because the tires are huge.
I hear the, what am I hearing, the leather?
Yeah, heating and leather. It's the seat belt.
Sorry.
Against
well,
the,
it's not really fair because you're dealing with a car that's 50 years old almost.
Yeah.
Okay, so where you'd normally have rubber mountings on the engine block to absorb some shock or some vibration, that rubber has gotten hard over time, and consequently, so it's not really fair to say.
But the chassis is strong. I mean,
this was as quiet as any car.
Yeah.
And this is a body-on-chassis design. This is not a, No, it runs and drives perfectly. Now, do you find as a young person you're being singled out for driving a Rolls-Royce? Do people look at you like, ew?
I find that people love it. I've been not stopped, but I've been on highways where an 18-wheeler driver pulled down his window and goes, "Is that a Camargue?" I go, "Yeah." And then I was in the Hamptons in Sag Harbor, and someone was like, I love it. I love that a young guy like you is driving this car and not some 2004 Lamborghini,
right? Well, that's interesting.
With aftermarket wheels.
Right. That's funny. That's true.
You're
well, I love the story. I
self.
love the story that it's your grandfather's car. I mean, to me, that makes it twice as valuable.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key to it. So that's what, because this was supposed to be me versus Donald, one design over another. When you bring the family aspect into it, well, it then becomes something else.
That was me cheating.
And nobody wanted it in my family. Nobody cared about it. It was about estate planning, and they said, all right, well, what about the car in the garage? And my grandma said, well, the attorney said, it's not worth anything. And at the time, and 9-10 years ago, I think one sold for like $28,000 or $35,000. And so my aunt and uncle were like, just sell it. And my grandma said, no, I want it to stay in the family.
Right.
And they said, well, who do we give it to? And she said, give it to the only person who cares about it. Give it to Ben.
Right.
And so that's why on my 16th,
I think it's great. I think it's great. And that just shows you, I mean, there's the real world and the fact that your Rolls Royce is only worth $28,000. In some families, 10 children are dividing $28,000.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, the idea that it's not worth anything, $28,000. Really? Isn't that a lot of money? It seems like a lot of money to me.
Everything is always relative.
I know. And this came from a relative, so there you go.
Everything is relative, including the Rolls-Royce.
No, I think it's wonderful, and the fact that if I were you, I would join the Rolls-Royce Club, and they can be very helpful in telling you places to get it fixed and parts that are interchangeable that won't cost you a fortune. And it's fun that you preserve it and keep it, and it is worth infinitely more than that now because it's a one owner, low mileage car. It's never been out of the family. That makes it very valuable. I think this is a real steal. I think it's great to have.
And something I was talking to Donald about before, which I thought was fascinating, and I only learned about it this summer, is when you drive a Jeep, you give up the peace sign to show we're both cool. We drive Jeeps. And this summer, I started noticing other Bentleys and Rolls Royces were flashing their brights at me.
That's fun.
And I said, well, this is happening. This is the third time it's happening. I think it's a thing. I think I'm part of a club now.
Yeah.
And so I confirmed with Donald, and he's like, yep, you are part of the Rolls-Royce and Bentley Club.
Yeah. And of course, this is the same V8 that they've had since '62. Nothing wrong with that. Jaguar used the same 6 since 1948, so that's okay. Something's working, don't break it. But
Exactly. And as you spoke about before, the way that they dealt with emissions, this engine first started with twin SUs.
right.
And then they went to I think it was a 4-barrel Solex in Europe, but the US cars got this Bosch Jetronic injection. And I believe this is the first fuel-injected Rolls-Royce.
Yeah, they just did not have the money or the means to do it properly. It was a small company.
So what do you think about the road handling of this car?
You know what, handles fine. It drives not. You know what it is? If you're a fan of like a '72 Buick Electra, you get that same wafting thing,
Right.
you know? No, it's very nice. I mean, I can feel the age, you know. Probably a set of motor mounts wouldn't do it any harm because they'd be a little softer. There's a tinge of vibration that wouldn't be there if it was new, but that's because the motor mounts have gotten a bit hard, so it feels a little rough against the chassis.
Right.
No, the thing that makes it outstanding, there are no dings or dents. The paintwork looks great. I would use a lot of hide food on this leather. This is the leather that would benefit from it. You always want to let a car come off the gauges before you drive away in it. Not so much with modern cars, but something like this, the oil gets thick and heavy, and just let it lubricate and then pull away, you know.
And we got lucky that it was stored in a dry garage. You know,
Right.
had it been stored in Florida where my grandmother moved, who would have known, you know,
Oh,
what
yeah.
the salt
No,
water
it would
would
have
have done
been
to
the
it.
salt water, the mold. It would have been a nightmare.
So it was a blessing that it was just so cool and dry where it was for all those decades. It's hard for me to picture that this cost equivalent to around $600,000 at the time.
Correct.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things that I found quite accidentally, doing a study one day, was that the Rolls-Royce sedan of the day, no matter what it is, for about 40 or 50, almost 50 years, tracked the median house price of a 2-bedroom house in the U.S.
Yeah, that's about right. There's a wonderful 60 Minutes with Morley Savory. He goes to Italy to visit Lamborghini. You've seen that, right?
Yes.
And he says, if you think this is an ad for Lamborghini, it's not, because they're all sold out. And if you could afford one, they cost $100,000. I mean, it's just like what a full-size Honda Accord, you know.
Exactly. It's one of the reasons why I love watching the old episodes of Perry Mason.
Yeah.
Because they're always talking about, this could have netted you $200,000. You wouldn't have to work for the rest of your life.
Yeah. That's funny. And Columbo's like that too. With John Cassavetes, he goes, "Mr. Cal, what is that house like this? What does it cost?" So is this house? And it's the biggest mansion you can imagine, Beverly. $125,000. He goes, that's
Holy cow.
12 years salary. That's 12 years salary. He made $11,000 a year. See, this looks like that. See that Lincoln?
Yes.
Oh,
But this
No.
Lincoln
From the
copied-
side,
But
from
this
the
Lincoln
side.
copied this. This was first.
Yeah, maybe. You
this
might
is
be
better
right.
looking.
Yeah.
Oh, it is better looking.
But the look of the clean-lined Elwood angle design of the Lincoln Continental in 1961 was taken from the Pininfarina designs in the late 1950s.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely correct in that this reminds you exactly of, especially your Imperial. I mean,
Right.
they have so much in common. But you know, you have to consider what the root is.
Well, Ben, congratulations on getting this car. It's nice to see a young person value something like this. You know, a lot of guys your age would sell it and get a Mustang GT or just, you know, something that's equally cool, I guess. But to me, it's a
Totally
piece of
different.
history. It's a piece of family history. It's something you can keep in your family your whole life. I don't think it would cost a fortune to maintain this over the years. And when you have kids, it would be your great-grandfather's car, which would be even cooler. So, Ben, thank you, my friend.
Thank you so much for
And
having
Donald,
me.
once again, Donald, thank you. I put
Absolutely.
up with Donald because it leads to things like this. So it makes it all worthwhile. Donald,
It's all worthwhile.
thank you for bringing Ben and his car to the show here. And I hope you enjoyed this little ride down two-door coupe lane, I guess you could call it. And we'll see you guys next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.